So, I've been getting to work on SubPar and have a wee toy set up with most of the core mechanics for the game I want. The summary from the last video was that I'm planning on making a mobile game in Unity all about mini-golf. Starting with a control scheme, I'm using a slingshot style movement where you can tap on the screen and then drag your finger, or your mouse in my case, around to aim the ball and choose how much power you want. So you can see here, if I let go, the ball shot to the side. I'm not happy with how the power and the direction are communicated with the player, so I've still got to work that out, but for now, this is what we're working with. To turn the user's pointer position into a world position, I take a raycast from the camera through the pointer and see where it lands on this invisible plane. Using the world position of the pointer when the player starts touching the screen and the position of when they let go, I can do some trivial math to get a force to push the ball. Then, instead of getting to work on the actual gameplay, I decided to take a detour and work on the rendering. So what I wanted to achieve was for objects that are blocking the view of the ball to fade out, so that even if you went behind something, some environment art, or even part of the scene, you could still see the ball. So here, if I move behind this block, you can see it goes partially transparent. So I can still see it, but I can also see the ball. To achieve this, I take a raycast from the camera through to the ball. Here we can see there's an old debug line to show that. And then, once I've determined what objects are blocking through that raycast, I duplicate the material on the object, making sure I only do this once for each object, and then I just modify the transparency value, or the alpha value, sorry. I have to duplicate the material, otherwise any objects sharing that material in the scene would also fade, so you'd get fading floors with a fading cube. As it stands, there are a few flaws with this system. One, I can't make objects any more than 50% transparent because they then lose their shadows. I also have to be very careful about where I place objects in the scene because the transparency also messes with the render order. So if we move this object over, we can see it doesn't seem to behave right. Getting onto the mechanics now, the most basic non-static object is one that just moves along a fixed path. The way I've done this is I define a handful of keyframes for each path, and the object will just interpolate between them. This way I can easily define positions and rotations at various points. Of course, I can adjust the speed of it. So if I half that, you'll see, if I half the round trip time, you'll see it move faster. If I multiply it by 10, it's a lot slower. But what is really cool is I can turn on or off constant velocity. So if they're on, it always moves at the same speed, no matter how far the different keyframes are apart. If I turn it off, it's the same time between each keyframe, regardless of their distance. I've also added the ability to smooth out the object's movement. So here you can see it's moving perfectly along that path. But if I enable this block, just for debugging purposes, and I increase this one, you can see here the blue object is moving along the path perfectly, but the green one, the actual object that's a part of the game, is smoothed out and it follows it. I've also added a reset time, so once the object's finished its path, it'll pause there for a moment. This is useful for things like a booster. So here, it's almost like a loading time. We've got time to get onto it, and then it'll shoot you up without having to define a whole bunch of dummy keyframes just to pad out the timing. For objects with physics properties, things you can knock over, I don't really need to do anything. Unity has the colliders and the rigid bodies built in for me, so I just need to attach the components, and they were going. Probably the most fun mechanic to make was the chutes. They work more or less like one-way portals that can be chained together. A chute only needs to know about the next one in the chain. By design, they don't preserve velocity. I've chosen to specify an exit velocity for each one. To make them seem more like chutes rather than portals, I've also specified a delay So it'll go through one and it'll wait for a certain amount of time before it'll pop out the next one. In this time, it is the object that goes through is non-collidable and frozen, making the system work for far more objects than there'll probably ever be. Say like 20 balls just shot down it. I've also made it that if something does go wrong and a ball gets stuck in the chute and not actually ejected out, there's a maximum time that it can sit there before it'll be teleported to the next one, regardless of whether it ever leaves the chute or not. Finally, I've also added a little nudge velocity to when it exits. So instead of just shooting straight up, it'll go up and then off to the side a little bit, if I specify that, meaning that chutes pointing straight up you won't just fall back straight down to. So here, if I were to jump to there, you can see I pop out and to the side a little bit. The idea is that these few mechanics will make up the core of the game. I'm a bit sick of looking at this solid green, so for the next devlog I'm going to be looking into styling for the game. I hope you stick around for that one.